Terrence Walker's hands moved across the security monitor at 2:47 a.m., scanning 4 to 7 camera feeds in the Harrison Tech Tower lobby. The building was silent except for the hum of ventilation systems and the occasional buzz of his radio. He'd worked this shift for 3 years, every night from midnight to 8, watching over $1 billion corporation while the rest of Chicago slept. On the desk beside him sat a stack of medical bills. The top one showed a balance of $47,000. Below that, another for $12,300. Below that, receipts from CVS Pharmacy, Amora's sickle cell medication, $3,200 per month. Insurance covered 60%. The other 40% was slowly burying him alive. Terrence rubbed his eyes and checked camera 12. Everything normal. He'd been doing this so long he could spot irregularities in seconds: a door left propped open, a motion sensor offline, a server room running 3 degrees too hot. 2 weeks ago, he'd caught a system vulnerability that the IT department had missed for 6 months. He'd written it up, submitted it to his supervisor, and watched it get forwarded up the chain with someone else's name attached. That's how it worked when you were invisible. But Terrence hadn't always been invisible. 12 years ago, he was a lead systems architect at Vanguard Systems in Boston. He designed the Vanguard Neural Framework, a revolutionary infrastructure protocol that half the tech industry still used. 8 patents. 400 academic citations. He'd been recruited by 14 companies, including Harrison Tech. He'd turned them all down because his wife was pregnant, and Vanguard offered stability. Then Amora was born with sickle cell anemia. Then the medical bills started. Then his wife looked at him one morning and said, "I didn't sign up for this," and walked out when Amora was 8 months old. Then Vanguard downsized his department. Then he moved to Chicago for a fresh start and took the only job that let him be home when his daughter woke up. Now, if you're listening to this story right now, I need to ask you something. Can someone's worth really disappear just because their circumstances change? Drop a comment below. I want to know if you've ever felt invisible in a place where you knew you belonged. At 3:15 a.m., Terrence stood to make his rounds. Near the employee bulletin board, something caught his eye. A printed flyer, crisp and new. It Operations Manager. $95,000 plus full benefits. 8+ years experience required. Terrence read it 3 times. The salary was triple what he made now. The health insurance alone would cover Amora's treatments. He pulled out his phone and photographed the posting. He knew this building better than anyone. He'd walked every floor, every conference room, every executive suite. He understood their systems because he'd built the frameworks they ran on. And he had 12 years of experience, for more than required. His thumb hovered over the application link. Do I tell them about Vanguard? Or will they think I'm lying? He made a decision. He would tell the truth. All of it. At 3:47 a.m., he submitted his application listing both positions: Lead Systems Architect, Vanguard Systems, Boston, 8 years, and Security Officer, Harrison Tech, Chicago, 3 years. He pressed submit before he could talk himself out of it. 3 days passed. Then, on Thursday morning, his phone buzzed while he was making breakfast for Amora. The email subject line read, "Interview Invitation, IT Operations Manager." His 6-year-old daughter looked up from her cereal, her medical bracelet catching the kitchen light. "Dad, why are you smiling?" "I got an interview, baby." "Does that mean we can stay in Chicago?" Terrence's chest tightened. They were 2 months behind on rent. Mrs. Chen, their neighbor, had been watching Amora out of kindness, but he couldn't ask her to keep doing it for free. If this didn't work out, they'd have to move again. Somewhere cheaper. Somewhere farther from Amora's doctors. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe it does." But there was something he didn't know. 2 months earlier, he'd helped an elderly woman who'd nearly collapsed near the elevators during his rounds. She'd been disoriented, dropping papers everywhere. Terrence had helped her sit down, called for medical assistance, and stayed until she was stable. She'd looked at his name badge and smiled. "Terrence. Thank you." He never saw her again. What Terrence didn't know was that the woman was Victoria Harrison, the billionaire CEO of Harrison Tech. And she'd been looking for him ever since. On Tuesday morning, Terrence borrowed a navy suit from his neighbor and took the bus downtown. He arrived 30 minutes early and sat in the lobby, watching executives pass through with their coffee and briefcases. At 9:55 a.m., he took the elevator to the 15th floor. The doors opened. Standing in the hallway was a man in an expensive charcoal suit, looking at a clipboard. He glanced up, saw Terrence, and his expression shifted instantly, from neutral to something cold and dismissive. The man's eyes traveled from Terrence's borrowed suit to his worn shoes to his face. "You're the security guard?" the man asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. Terrence's stomach dropped. He recognized that tone. He'd heard it before, in a dozen different rooms, from a dozen different people who'd already decided he didn't belong. "Yes," Terrence said quietly. "I'm here for the IT operations manager interview." The man smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Well," he said, gesturing down the hallway. "This should be interesting." The man in the charcoal suit extended his hand. Derek Hammond, head of talent acquisition. His handshake was brief, perfunctory. "Follow me." Terrence walked behind him down a glass-walled corridor. Through the windows, he could see the Chicago skyline stretching toward Lake Michigan. He'd cleaned these offices at night, emptying trash bins and wiping down desks. Now he was walking through them in daylight, and everything felt different. Derek opened the door to a conference room. 3 people sat at a long glass table. "Mr. Walker, welcome," said a woman in her 40s with kind eyes. "I'm Rachel Kim, VP of Operations." She gestured to the man beside her. "This is Stephen Park, our IT director." Stephen nodded. Derek took the seat at the head of the table, directly across from Terrence. "So," Rachel began, opening a folder. "Your resume is impressive. Lead systems architect at Vanguard. You designed the neural framework." "Yes." Stephen leaned forward, interested. "We still use modified versions of that architecture. It's brilliant work." For a moment, Terrence let himself hope. They saw it. They understood. Then Derek spoke. "That was 12 years ago." He tapped his pen against the folder. "What have you been doing since?" Terrence kept his voice steady. "I worked at Vanguard for 8 years, then transitioned to security." Derek's smile was sharp. "You've been a security guard here for 3 years." The room shifted. Rachel glanced at Derek, her expression uncertain. Stephen's eyes dropped to his notes. "Yes," Terrence said. "I had family priorities that required." "For 3 years." Derek interrupted. "Most people in your position would have found something more comparable. Something that utilized those impressive skills you mentioned. If you've ever been in a room where someone decided your worth before you even spoke, drop a comment right now. Because what happens next will either break you or make you realize your value was never theirs to determine." Terrence felt his chest tighten. "I made the choices I needed to make for my daughter." Derek wrote something in his notes, underlined it twice. "Where did you complete your degree, Mr. Walker?" "I don't have a traditional 4-year degree. I have multiple certifications and 12 years of hands-on." "No degree." Derek's pen scratched across the paper. Rachel interjected. "The job posting doesn't require a degree if the candidate has equivalent experience, which Mr. Walker clearly." "I'm just establishing background," Derek said smoothly. He looked back at Terrence. "You currently work the midnight shift. As building security." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, loaded with implication. Stephen shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. "This role," Derek continued, "requires interaction with C-suite executives, board members, high-profile clients." He paused. "Do you think someone in your current position can represent Harrison Tech's image in those contexts?" There it was. The real question beneath all the others. Terrence's hands gripped the armrests. He knew exactly what Derek was asking. Not "can you do the job?" but "do you look like you belong here?" "I believe," Terrence said carefully, "that my work speaks for itself." Derek smiled. "I'm sure it does. In the right context." The silence that followed felt suffocating. Rachel looked down at her folder. Stephen studied his coffee cup. Derek closed Terrence's file with a soft snap. "We appreciate your time, Mr. Walker." Terrence sat there for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. He looked at each of them: Rachel, who couldn't meet his eyes; Stephen, who found something fascinating about the table; Derek, who watched him with polite, dismissive patience. He thought about Amora asking if they could stay in Chicago. He thought about the $47,000 in medical bills. He thought about Mrs. Chen, who'd been watching his daughter out of kindness while he worked nights for 3 years. He thought about begging. About explaining himself further. About lowering himself to prove he was worth their consideration. And then he thought, no. Terrence stood. His legs were steady. His voice was calm. "Thank you for your time. I understand." He didn't ask for another chance. He didn't explain about Amora's illness or his wife leaving or the system crash he'd prevented 2 weeks ago that saved this company millions. He didn't give them the satisfaction of watching him plead. He simply turned and walked toward the door. "Mr. Walker," Rachel called out, her voice almost apologetic. Terrence paused, his hand on the door handle. We'll be in touch." They both knew that was a lie. Terrence nodded once and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. The hallway stretched before him, empty, sterile, fluorescent bright. His reflection stared back from the glass walls. He looked tired. He looked like a man who'd been fighting too long with nothing to show for it. He pressed the elevator button and waited. When the doors opened, he stepped inside and watched the numbers descend. 15. 14. 13. At least I didn't beg, he thought. At least I kept that. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened onto the vast marble lobby. Morning sunlight poured through the glass walls. Employees moved through their routines with coffee cups and leather bags, absorbed in their own worlds. Terrence crossed the lobby toward the exit. His phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Chen. "Amora's asking when you'll be home. She wants to know how it went." He didn't know what to tell her. He pushed through the glass doors. The cold Chicago wind hit his face. Behind him, Harrison Tech Tower rose into the sky, indifferent and untouchable. Somewhere up there, Derek Hammond was probably already interviewing the next candidate, someone with a degree, someone who'd never had to mop these floors at 2 a.m. Terrence stepped onto the sidewalk. And then, from inside the lobby, a voice cut through the morning air. "Terrence Walker. Stop." Terrence froze. He turned slowly. A woman was running across the marble lobby, actually running, her heels clicking rapidly against the floor. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, moving with urgent purpose. Security guards stepped back when they saw her. Employees stopped to stare. And Terrence recognized her face. It was the woman from 2 months ago. The one who'd nearly collapsed by the elevators. The one he'd helped. But that wasn't possible. Because the woman running toward him, breathing hard, her eyes locked on his, was Victoria Harrison. The billionaire CEO of Harrison Tech. Worth $3.2 billion. And she was shouting his name. Victoria Harrison stopped 3 feet away from Terrence, catching her breath. Her security detail had followed her into the lobby but kept their distance. Every employee within sight had frozen, watching. "Don't leave," she said. "Please." Terrence's mind was racing. "Ms. Harrison, You don't remember me, do you?" She straightened her suit jacket. 2 months ago. Elevator bank, 3rd floor. I was having a dizzy spell. You helped me. The memory clicked into place. The disoriented woman with the papers. He'd given her water, stayed with her until building medical arrived. "That was you," he said quietly. "You never asked who I was. You just helped." Victoria's expression shifted, something between gratitude and regret. "I wanted to thank you properly, but I never followed through. Until 15 minutes ago, when I was reviewing interview recordings and saw your face on the monitor." Terrence felt his stomach drop. "You watched the interview?" "I watched them all. It's part of a culture audit I've been conducting." Her jaw tightened. "And what I just witnessed was unacceptable." She gestured toward the lobby seating area, away from the growing crowd of onlookers. Terrence followed, his mind still trying to process what was happening. Victoria turned to face him, her voice lower but no less intense. Are you the same Terrence Walker who designed the Vanguard neural framework? The question hit him like a physical blow. How do you know about that? Because 7 years ago, I personally sent you a recruitment offer. Executive-level position. You turned me down. Her eyes searched his face. You said you were committed to Vanguard and starting a family. Terrence remembered. The letter had offered $200,000, more money than he'd ever imagined. He declined because his wife was 6 months pregnant and Vanguard had promised him equity. That was before everything fell apart, he said. Victoria's expression softened for just a moment. Then her CEO mask returned, sharp, calculating, decisive. Wait here. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Her voice carried authority that made Terrence's spine straighten involuntarily. Derek. Conference room C. Now. She ended the call and looked at Terrence. You don't have to stay for this. You can walk out right now, and no one would blame you. But if you stay, I'm going to make sure the truth gets spoken. Here's what I need you to understand. Sometimes the system isn't broken by accident. It's working exactly as someone designed it. If you've ever been told you don't belong somewhere you were more than qualified to be, comment below. Because this next part is for you. Terrence thought about leaving. About protecting what little dignity he had left. Then he thought about Amora asking, "Did you give up, Dad?" "I'll stay." 5 minutes later, Derek stepped out of the elevator. His confident stride faltered when he saw Victoria standing with Terrence in the conference room. "Ms. Harrison, I wasn't expecting." "Sit down, Derek." He's Saturday. Victoria remained standing. She pulled up a screen on the conference room display. Terrence's old portfolio appeared. Patents, architecture diagrams, published papers, industry citations. "Derek, tell me why you rejected Mr. Walker for the IT operations manager position." Derek glanced between them, recalibrating. "The candidate didn't meet our profile requirements." "His current role as security." "His current role." Victoria's voice could have cut glass. "Or his qualifications." "Both factors contribute to." "Answer the question." Derek shifted. "He lacks a 4-year degree. He's been out of architecture work for 3 years. And the role requires someone who can represent our professional image to clients and board members." "Professional image," Victoria repeated. She pointed to the screen. "This man holds 7 patents in infrastructure design. The framework he created is deployed in 847 enterprise systems worldwide. Current licensing value, $1.2 billion. Half of our own systems are built on modified versions of his work." Derek's face went pale. "You rejected him," Victoria continued, "not because he lacks qualifications. You rejected him because he's been working security. Because he doesn't have a piece of paper from a university. Because he didn't fit your narrow definition of what a successful candidate looks like. I was following standard hiring protocols. Your protocols just cost us 3 years of innovation. 3 years where one of the most brilliant architects in the industry was mopping our floors at 2 a.m., and you never even noticed." The silence was devastating. Victoria turned to Terrence. "I owe you an apology. Not just for today, for allowing a system to exist where this could happen at all." Derek started to speak. Victoria held up one hand. "Derek, effective immediately, you're reassigned to HR compliance auditing. Rachel Kim is now head of talent acquisition. You'll spend the next 6 months reviewing every hiring decision you've made, and you'll identify every qualified candidate who was rejected for reasons that had nothing to do with their abilities." Derek's face went from pale to gray. "Ms. Harrison, we're done here." He left without another word. Victoria waited until the door closed, then turned back to Terrence. Her expression shifted, no longer the CEO delivering judgment, but something more human. "Mr. Walker, I'm not offering you the IT operations manager position." Terrence's chest tightened. Of course. This was all just theater. A way to make herself look good while. "I'm offering you Chief Technology Officer." Terrence forgot how to breathe. $340,000 base salary. Full stock options. Executive benefits. And every medical bill your daughter has, every single one, will be covered retroactively and going forward. Our corporate health plan will handle everything." The room tilted. Terrence gripped the edge of the table. "Why?" The word came out barely above a whisper. Victoria's eyes were fierce. "Because 20 minutes ago, I watched my own company judge a man by his current circumstances instead of his capabilities. Because I've spent 20 years building Harrison Tech on principles of innovation and merit, and today I learned we've failed at both. You're going to help me fix that?" She extended her hand. Terrence looked at it. At her. At the screen still showing his life's work. He thought about Amora's medical bracelet. About Mrs. Chen watching her for free. About 3 years of invisible nights. About Derek's smile when he said, "In the right context." He thought about walking away right now, about how this offer felt too good to be real. And then he thought about the little girl waiting at home who needed to see her father stop letting the world tell him what he was worth. But before he could shake Victoria's hand, he heard himself say, "I have one condition." Victoria's eyebrow raised. "Name it." "I want to review every candidate your company rejected in the past year," Terrence said. "If there's anyone else like me, overlooked because they didn't fit someone's profile, dismissed because their resume didn't match expectations, I want them reconsidered." Victoria studied him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. "Done," she said. "And I'll add one more condition of my own. You'll redesign our entire hiring process." They shook hands. "Report Monday morning," Victoria said. 20th floor. Your office is being prepared." Terrence left the building in a daze. The Chicago skyline looked different somehow, not indifferent anymore, but full of possibility. He pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Chen, "Need to talk to you about Amora's care. Things are about to change." Then he texted his daughter, "Dad didn't win, baby. But Dad didn't give up either." 2 months later. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Week 1, Terrence met with Victoria and the executive board. He presented a comprehensive infrastructure overhaul, a 3-year plan to modernize Harrison Tech systems using updated versions of his original framework. The board approved it unanimously. Week 2, he requested access to all hiring records from the past 18 months. He spent 70 hours reviewing rejected applications. What he found made him angry all over again. A former high school teacher who'd taught herself to code, rejected for lack of formal computer science education. An ex-military logistics coordinator with 12 years managing complex supply chains, rejected for insufficient corporate experience. A 4 to 6-year-old career changer who'd spent 2 decades in retail management before earning cloud computing certifications, rejected for unconventional career trajectory. Terrence called them all personally. All 3 accepted positions within the week. Week 4, his first major system upgrade went live. Network efficiency increased by 26%. Server response times dropped by 40%. The IT department, initially skeptical of the security guard turned CTO, started looking at him differently. Week 6, TechCrunch ran an article, "Harrison Tech's Unlikely CTO, How a Security Guard Revolutionized a Billion-Dollar Company's Infrastructure." Week 8, Terrence opened his online patient portal and saw Amora's medical account, $0 balance. Paid in full by Harrison Tech Executive Health Plan. He sat at his temporary desk and cried for the first time in 3 years. First day as permanent CTO. Monday morning, 8:30 a.m. Terrence walked through the Harrison Tech lobby wearing a charcoal gray suit he'd bought himself. Perfectly fitted, perfectly his. Employees nodded as he passed. Some he recognized from his security days. Most didn't recognize him at all. He took the executive elevator to the 20th floor. The doors opened onto a hallway he'd once cleaned at 2 a.m., emptying trash and wiping fingerprints from glass walls. His assistant, Kim, who'd been promoted from front desk staff, greeted him with coffee. "Morning, Mr. Walker. Your 9 o'clock is ready when you are." "Thanks, Kim. And it's just Terrence." His office was a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. On his desk, he'd placed a single photo, Amora, smiling, healthy, wearing her new purple backpack. The nameplate on his door read, Terrence Walker, Chief Technology Officer. He sat down, took a breath, and got to work. At noon, he walked through the building for a facilities review. When he reached the main lobby, he saw someone new at the security desk, a young man, maybe 25, monitoring the same 47 camera feeds Terrence had watched for 3 years. Terrence approached. "What's your name?" The guard looked up, startled to see an executive addressing him. "Jerome, sir. Jerome Matthews." "How long have you been here, Jerome?" 4 months, sir." "You notice anything about the building? Systems that could work better? Processes that don't make sense?" Jerome hesitated. I've noticed the 3rd floor HVAC cycles inefficiently. Runs cold all night, then overcompensates during morning hours. But I didn't think. "Email me your observations," Terrence said, handing him a business card. "All of them. And Jerome? If you ever want to move into IT or operations, come talk to me. I'm serious." Jerome stared at the card. Terrence Walker, Chief Technology Officer. You're the guy from the article. The one who used to work security." "That's right." "And you're saying I could?" "I'm saying your current title doesn't define your potential. I'm proof of that. If you're listening to this right now and you've ever felt like your circumstances were a life sentence, drop a comment. Because here's what I need you to understand: your story isn't over. The people who overlook you today won't define who you become tomorrow. But you have to decide, will you walk away defeated, or will you walk away with your head up, knowing your worth exists whether they see it or not? That evening, Terrence picked up Amora from school. She ran to him wearing her purple backpack, the one he'd finally been able to afford, the one she'd wanted for 8 months. "Dad, guess what? I went the whole day without needing my inhaler." Terrence knelt down, eye level with his daughter. Her medical bracelet caught the afternoon light, but somehow it didn't look as heavy anymore. "That's amazing, baby." "Dad." She touched his tie, dark blue, silk, new. "You look different." "Different how?" "Happy different." Terrence pulled her into a hug, feeling the weight of 3 years finally lift from his shoulders. "You know what, baby? I think I am." They walked to his car, not the bus, not anymore. The Chicago skyline stretched behind them, and for the first time, Terrence felt like he belonged in the city. "Dad?" Amora asked as he buckled her seatbelt. "Did you win?" Terrence thought about the question. About Derek Hammond's dismissive smile. About Victoria running across the lobby. About Jerome at the security desk. About the 3 people he'd helped hire. About the photo on his desk and the 0 balance on Amora's medical account. "No, baby. I didn't win." "Then what happened?" "I stopped letting other people tell me what I'm worth. And I found someone brave enough to see the truth." Amora considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old can manage. "So you didn't give up?" "No, sweetheart. I didn't give up. And I never will." She smiled, and that smile was worth more than any title, any salary, any corner office with a view of Lake Michigan. They drove home through the city. Terrence glanced at his reflection in the rearview mirror, tired but satisfied, changed but still himself. For the first time in years, he recognized the person looking back. Your value isn't determined by who overlooks you. It's revealed when someone finally sees you clearly. Titles change. Circumstances shift. But your worth, your actual worth, exists whether anyone acknowledges it or not. Sometimes all you need is one person with the courage to look past your title and see your truth. And sometimes, that one person needs to be you. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt invisible in a place where you knew you belonged, do me a favor, subscribe right now. My best friend told me these stories are too long, that nobody watches past 3 minutes anymore. But I believe stories like Terrence's deserve to be heard, not the 3-minute version, but the whole truth. Help me prove that real stories, the ones that take time to tell properly, still matter. Hit that subscribe button, and let's build something together.